as advertised, we have Mr. Marty Maley. He is running for Attorney General here in the state of Louisiana, trying to fill some big shoes. But Mr. Marley, welcome to the Cajun Conservative Show.
Thank you, Isaac. I'm just really delighted to be here today, and it was such a pleasure to get here a few minutes early and visit with your dad and your family. You have a beautiful family, and those children are just I know they're precious. Yeah, they're the light of your life. I know.
They act like that in front of y'all, but me, I don't know what's wrong. They turned the switch on with me later on. Now I'm gonna be, because now we got video evidence.
Yes, sir.
I did offer you some fried fish, some ribs, and some stuff. You like, no, you got an event after this where you're gonna be eating a little bit. So I was like, oh well, next time.
No, you were very gracious about that, and yes, I do have an event at Buck and Johnny's tonight in New Iberia, and just looking forward to meeting some folks from around here and just keeping the ball rolling.
You said Buck and Johnny's. That's in Bro Bridge, correct? Not New Iberia.
New Iberia. I mean, Bro Bridge. Yeah. Buck and Johnny's and Bro Bridge. My bad.
There's some good eating over there, though, too, man.
They're supposed to have some good food laid out for us.
Well, now we know each other. You can call me in advance so I can plan for them. I like going to public events. You know, I love going to political events. Well, Mr. Marty, I want to, again, thank you for coming. This has been in the works in a while. We had a previous engagement, but unfortunately you had a death in your family, and we give you our condolences on that. But we're glad we're in here in the studio today, and we have a heated AG race here in the state of Louisiana. We got some good candidates up there, and you included. First off, why you decide to run for Attorney General?
Look, Isaac, I think my life has brought me to this point. My resume, I tell everybody when I get to speak to a crowd, my resume screams Attorney General. I've got 28 years of criminal prosecution experience. I've got 25 years of law enforcement experience. I hold a commission in West Baton Rouge right now, and I've been a vice president of the largest victims group in the state for a good while now, and had a successful law firm since 1991. So we check a lot of boxes, and I have the resume that gives me, and the contacts, connections, and the touch that gives me the ability to go and administer this office properly and do a really, really good job for everyone.
So with that, what is the duties of the Attorney General? We hear that he's the top law enforcement officer of the state of Louisiana. I was talking with a friend the other day. We were discussing AG Landry's position on when he made a statement like, hey, when he becomes governor, he's going to clean up New Orleans. And somebody asked me, well, isn't that his job right now? So as a candidate, I want to ask you that. What is the duties of the Attorney General? And cities like Baton Rouge, New Orleans, Shreveport, that have a high crime rate. Yeah. Chicago and New Orleans, unfortunately, has a war on who has the most murders in a month. So what is the duties of the Attorney General?
I appreciate you asking that question, because the average person in Louisiana doesn't have a lot of interaction with the AG's office and really doesn't know. There's multiple aspects of the AG's office. Let's talk first about what's on everybody's mind in Louisiana, and that's crime. And I think you bring up a good point, and I have no criticism of Mr. Landry and how he handled crime, but what needs to happen is that the AG needs to take a very, very aggressive approach to crime in this state and work with our other elected officials. The way the prosecution process works at the AG's office is this. The district attorneys have, in each judicial district, have complete constitutional authority over whom, when, where, and how to prosecute. And that's a broad brush and a broad grant of authority. When the district attorney comes to a situation where he might have a conflict with a particular case, it comes to the AG's office through a referral process. So then the AG, myself, steps in and becomes just like the local district attorney, just like Bo Dewey here, just steps in and handles that case just like Bo would. And so that's what's going on with the criminal stuff. The AG's office has some independent authority to investigate certain crimes and has a bunch of investigators and basically a complete police force to go out and do that and assist other law enforcement. The AG's office is tasked with doing a bunch of training. Justices of the peace are one area that the AG trains, and those folks are across our state and are generally they're judges, but they're lower on the totem pole in terms of jurisdiction and stuff, but they're very integral to what goes on in day-to-day life. And it's important that they get trained. If the AG doesn't do it properly and doesn't do it efficiently and effectively and do a lot of training, well, those folks don't get what they need. So we would be committed to do that. So that's on the criminal side of things. On the civil side of things, the Attorney General issues lots and lots of opinions. Lots of folks can reach out and ask for an AG's opinion. You see legislators doing it. You see boards and commissions doing it. You see local politicians doing it. You see average ordinary citizens asking for AG opinions. And you get a considered civil opinion that's well researched and well documented, and it answers a legal question when it's posed. So that's very important. The AG defends the Constitution. If anybody raises a constitutional issue in the state of Louisiana over some statute that the legislature's passed, the AG steps in and fights that as well. One thing that Jeff has done, and my hat's off to Liz, his Solicitor General also. She's done a great job working with him and doing this, but they have fought government overreach. And my administration will continue to do that. There's certain things that the president and Congress impose on us down here at the local level that are just untenable. They don't work. They're not constitutional. They're not right. And we will fight those battles. You can count on me to fight every single constitutional battle with regard to all of our constitutional rights. With your dad and your brother, we talked about earlier. Right. We talked about guns, and we talked about freedom of religion, and we talked about some of the other constitutional rights. All those rights will be protected under my administration. And there's many, many other things that the AG's office does. We could go on for hours.
Yeah.
It's a large staff, and there's lots of tentacles, and they provide lots and lots of services. The last thing I'd like to say is I want everybody to understand what my administration plans to do with regard to requests for assistance. I'm pledging to you right now, just as I've done every time I speak to a group, I'm pledging to have a 24-hour turnaround. If somebody calls my office and asks for assistance, you're going to get a phone call back within 24 hours. Does that mean I can solve your problem within 24 hours? Absolutely not. Most of the time, it will take more time than that. But you're going to get interaction and feedback. You're going to feel like your situation is important to me because it is. And that's how we're going to handle our business. Have a very transparent office. If you need to come see me, if you need to schedule an appointment, if you need to talk to me or one of my staff, we're going to make that happen because it is we the people. And I tell everybody all the time, this is not my Attorney General's office. This will be your Attorney General's office.
So with that being said, and you if you become Attorney General, even if Liz becomes Attorney General or somebody, Shake Snyder or whoever, they have a good chance of having a Republican governor on their side with Jeff or someone of like. But what would happen if you become Attorney General and you have to deal with a governor, say Sam Wilson's? Sam Wilson's the only Democrat the Democrat candidate in this position. He has already said he's going to hold up a lot of what John Bell has said he was going to do. We know with Jeff and with John Bell that they were always in court. They were always they were always fighting each other concerning the law. How would you go ahead and face a Governor Sam Wilson? I hope we don't get there because the state of Louisiana don't need that. But as Attorney General, what would you do? With that, would you say, look, we need to work together? I don't know if Jeff has done that. We haven't talked to Jeff yet, but would you work with the governor to say, look, let's try to keep it out of court, let's do this and this, or would you go ahead and take it up to court if necessary?
One of the aspects of my life and my race has been that, people generally trust me. They believe that I will do the right thing. I'm very transparent, but I'm very bold about my personal mission statement and what I really stand for. And just like we talked about earlier, we talked about government overreach from Washington, D.C. Look, government overreach can come from,
Baton Rouge in the governor's mansion.
From Baton Rouge, and you described it very well. And so you have to be mindful of that. Do I want to go kick sand on the governor and start a fight from day one? Not necessarily, but if a fight is needed, you have somebody with a strong personal constitution who will do the right thing. And I will follow the state constitution, I will follow the federal constitution, and I will follow the laws that Louisiana legislature passes for us and has passed for us. We've got many, many laws on the books. Those need to be followed. If somebody gets out of bounds, then it'd be my job to get them back in bounds. And if it required, filing a lawsuit in state or federal court to assist in doing that and let a judge somewhere decide whether they were out of bounds, I'm not afraid to take that initiative and start that fight. I would hope that we could all be reasonable and we could have conversations, about things and try to get things done short of filing lawsuits. Because as soon as you file that lawsuit, it just gets in a quagmire. It takes sometimes years for those suits to work their way through the process. So is that my first initiative to file a lawsuit? Probably not. But is it in the arsenal and is it there in the quiver? And if we have to shoot that arrow, will we do it? 100%.
So with that, talking about lawsuits, we have a president that's right now, he's anti-gun, he's anti-oil, anti-border security. We just had the Florida legislation and the AG over there file a lawsuit that stopped President Biden from bringing illegal aliens into this country, bring them to the United States without a court date. That is in the works. We got articles today of how they're trying. The Attorney General Merrick Garland is trying to say, "Look, just release it. Let's do what we need to do." But Jeff has a. I'm not trying to compare you to Jeff. Don't get me wrong. He's the last Attorney General of the state, but he has taken on the Biden administration along with other Attorney Generals here in the country. How would you approach that? Because he has done one, I think, with Minnesota, Missouri. He has joined in with Mississippi. You have a lot of attorney generals in this country that believe the same way you do. If Biden comes out and says, "Look, we're going to stop drilling," and you see it's not in the best interest of the state or in the law, what would you do with jumping up to that as well? I kind of breaks the same thing with John Bell, but how would you do that with a national level?
Isaac, I'm not sure how much you really understand about how all that works, but I can tell you that those Republican attorney generals, the Democratic attorney generals meet as well, but they have conference calls frequently.
Okay.
They have conference calls frequently. They talk about national issues, and it's no accident that Texas might file a suit and Florida might file a suit. It's all very coordinated in an effort to push back on those liberal policies. The liberal policies are really hurting us right now nationwide, and not so much in Louisiana. We don't feel it as much as we see it in other areas of the United States, but where they go, we're going to go eventually if we don't do something about it.
Right.
So would I be willing to join other Republican AGs and fight those battles if it means filing suit against the president to enjoin some crazy, order that he's stroked his pen?
There's a lot of them.
There's a lot of them, yeah. So, but listen, I just want to make sure that listeners understand this, that you got to strike a balance. You got to fight those battles. And you only got so many resources, right? So you got to strike a balance. You got to fight those battles and pick the ones you really, really want to fight. And you got to save some resources to deal with what we got right here in Louisiana. We got lots of problems right here that need to be addressed.
Yeah.
Crime. We got still got issues with blue tarps from Jefferson Parish all the way to Calcasieu on the roofs. We got issues that are, that need to be dealt with, and the AG has. If he doesn't have authority to solve the problem, he's got a tremendous influence and a big stick to be able to come to the meeting and people will listen to him. So I want to use that effectively and I want to use it reasonably, and I want people to work with me because I am going to be the voice of reason, and I do bring people together. I don't divide people. Now, if I have to hit them over the head with my stick, if they won't listen, I'm not opposed to that. But the first move is always going to be, look, let's look at the issues. Let's see where we got common ground. Let's see if we can work these things out. That's going to be play one in the playbook.
Awesome. On the question of the state and the race, because we did mention earlier, you have John Stefanski that's running. I can't think of Liz's last name.
Liz Murrow.
Liz Murrow. Which we are reaching out to their campaign to try to see what we could do. But you have a lot of these Republican candidates in this race. You talked about one that was an independent. I didn't even hear of him yet. But you have a lot of, to my knowledge, no Democrat has come forward yet. No. But you have so it's basically just a Republican race for the Attorney General right now. And you addressed this at the House. This is why I wanted to ask for people can hear the race itself. You got 3 Republicans running. And unfortunately, Louisiana has a bad reputation of when it comes to the nitty gritty, there's rocks thrown, and there's blood flying. As a candidate, and I hope your other candidates don't do this, but how would you approach saying, look, this is what we're different, but at the same time, not trying to personally attack your opponent?
I've done this at every single forum I've had an opportunity to speak at, and one of the ones was in St. Martin Parish the end of last year, and it was very nice and well received. And so when I got a chance to take the mic, I did something unique. I lifted up my other two opponents, and I spoke highly of them. And I also talked about Mr. Belton, who's the independent up in North Louisiana. And I spoke highly of him, too, because I don't have any ill will with any of my opponents. I'm running for the office. I'm not running so much against them. I'm running to be the next AG. And so what I've done is I've explained the differences. And the differences are this. While the others have nice resumes and they have, something to bring to the party, we're different. My resume has to do with a crime-fighting resume. 28-year career prosecutor. Look, I had the privilege and the terror of participating in 2 serial killer cases over there in West Baton Rouge. Tony Clayton was the lead prosecutor, but I got to participate in those cases. Sean Gillis was one, and Derek Todd Lee was the other, and your listeners are going to know those names. And it was horrifying to see what those crazy men did to their victims. But because of those experiences and many, many more murder cases and lots of rapes and robberies and kidnappings and all sorts of stuff, all the way down to the little bitty stuff, I've done all of that. So I'm well seasoned and I understand how it works. I don't have to have anybody explain to me how to go try a criminal case. I'm going to be able to instruct my prosecutors and my staff when they get a case that's referred from the DA, we're going to be able to hit the ground running. And so that's something that the other two candidates don't have. They have other strengths, but they don't have that resume. And I think the citizens of Louisiana right now, at this time, want a tough crime fighter. And I am a tough crime fighter. But I'm also easy on victims. Now, let me speak just a moment, if I could, to what I did with the juveniles. So in West Baton Rouge for 11 years, I had the privilege of doing an extracurricular activity for my DA. Went to him and said, hey, man, can I run this early intervention program like Phil Haney, not too far away over here in 3 parishes near you, had developed? I said, can I run this early intervention program? He said, no problem. He said, I don't have any money for you. I said, don't worry about it. I'm going to go raise the money. So I went to the legislature and I went to Kitty Kimball, who's the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, and I aligned everybody and we got some money. And we got enough money to run the program. So I had counselors and I had caseworkers and I had myself and a couple of other lawyers that oversaw the program. And we ran that program effectively for 11 years. And it dealt with kindergarten through the 6th grade. So that with those little children, just like your 2 little babies out there are fixing to get to the age they go to school and kindergarten and all that. If they were to get off track on behavior, on truancy, on just minor stuff, right now there's really nothing in the system that addresses that. But it's so very important. It needs to be a statewide program. And I'm not saying we need to be the parents for every kid in the state, but if they get off track, we need to get them back on track. So from the statistics show, from kindergarten to 6th grade, what happens is the kids and their parents are compliant. They're compliant. They will, when given some instruction that makes sense and given some authority for which they need to apply, they will do the right thing and get back on track. Think about that for a moment. If you're in kindergarten through 6th grade and somebody gets you back on track and now you're in high school and you're successful, you don't have any more problems, you're not embroiled in crime, and you get an education and you graduate and you go to college or go to trade school or go to work, what a blessing. We don't know how many kids we could save, but we know it was a lot. I was handling between 150 to 250 families a month for 11 years. We saved a lot of kids and got them back on track. What happens, it's really interesting, and I'll close with this on this topic. When the kids get to be about 7th, 8th, 9th grade, your listeners completely identify with this. Boy, they get a little more hard-headed. By the time they're in 10th grade, they're running the show. They're running the show. You're not running the show. They're telling you what to do. So if you don't get them back on track when they're young, then they fall into a downward spiral, I call it. And sometimes it can end in a real bad situation. Sometimes it can just be minor stuff. But either way, it's rebuilding the fabric of Louisiana through our children. And so we need to be there to stand in the gap. If they start getting and going astray, we need to be there to nudge them back in the right direction. And that will pay so many dividends. So that's that group. The juvenile group, we know from the media what's going on with the juvenile group. There's all sorts of problems with juvenile justice across the state right now, and it needs a total revamp, in my opinion. It needs some more resources. It needs people looking at it from every aspect, from the criminal aspect, from the law enforcement aspect, from the counseling aspect, from the psychiatrist aspect, family aspect, church aspect. We need all those groups to come together and reform the juvenile justice system in Louisiana, because we can't lose them. If we lose them and we put them in that system, then sometimes what happens is they come out so much more educated as a criminal, and then they become an adult criminal, and then they graduate to much more severe crimes.
So with that being said, would you as an Attorney General have some legislative position to where you could maybe, like we talked about our friend Jason Dozero, who we had here and who personally.
Yes.
Let's say Jason, or even Chad. We can go with Chad Boyer, the other guy that's running for state rep in this district. They become state reps, and you really want to get this passed to where we go ahead and we talk to, you want to do something for the juveniles. Do you, as the Attorney General, can just go to the legislators and say, hey, look, I want this done? Or would you have to team up with a state rep or a state senator to say, hey, can we try to get this done?
As the AG, what you do is you go to your legislative leadership and you either pick out a friend or a group of friends or legislative leadership, and you propose an idea. And for the most part, you're going to find a legislator that will run with your ideas. Let me give you two ideas that I've been pondering lately in the juvenile arena. The first idea is that we probably need, and I haven't tested the constitutionality of this, it's just an idea, but we probably need some sort of 2, 3, 4 strike rule with the juveniles like we have in the adult system. We have 3 strikes in the adult system basically, and you're entitled to the habitual offender treatment, which has some very, very harsh penalties. Perhaps we could do something like that in the juvenile system as well. And so we would hopefully discourage those juveniles once they've committed one offense, educate them about you don't do that again, or you end up in a really, really bad place. Right. Second thing is real important, I think, in the fabric of all that. You got to attack, I call them the thugs, okay? The thug life. What happens to these young kids, many of them, and I saw this when I did this early intervention program, if their male role model is not around, their dad, their grandfather, their uncle, perhaps they're in jail, perhaps they're dead, perhaps they just left, they didn't show up for, Christmas dinner. If they're not around, guess what happens to many, many of those kids? The female role models aren't as strong as they used to be. We had the matriarchs that grabbed on to the family and, boy, they just rule with an iron fist. We don't have that as much anymore. What happened is those younger kids get pulled out of those families by the gangs. And it may not be an organized gang in your area. They may not have the Crips and the Bloods and all that craziness, but it's an informal gang. And they pull them in and they say, hey, man, come over here and hang with us. And when part of what hang with us means is that we're going to give you some tasks to do, and you're going to go do them, and you're going to earn your keep here. You're going to get your street cred. And that's what happens a lot of times with this juvenile crime. We've seen it in Baton Rouge, that young lady, Allie Rice, that was killed at that intersection with the railroad track and everything. They haven't solved that case yet, but purportedly there were a couple of younger males, black males, that walked up to the car and just shot 7 or 8 times into the car and then just disappeared. And I would submit to you that they didn't do that by accident. They did that as a deliberate order from somebody that they were in a network with. And so that's what's going on. That's really what's going on in America right now. And we got to attack that. So let's connect the dots. Let's go back to that thug that ordered all that. And if we can prove it, let's put him in prison for life or kill him. Put him to death.
Yeah.
And that would send a strong message to the thugs out there that we're not going to let you run your family that way.
Yeah, and like you said, prove it. You got to bring it to a court. Legislation.
It's got to be proved
through the jury process and all that stuff.
And it would need legislation to flesh out what I just described, so that you didn't. I don't want to violate anybody's constitutional rights, but at the same time, if that's what they're doing, if that's the conduct that's going on, I want to be strong about it, and I want us to have a remedy to start to address it. And I want us to fight back and push back. Just like we're pushing back in Washington, let's push back on some of our local crime issues. So
one more question before we wrap it up, Mr. Marty. I want to ask this because you brought about bringing it back to the states and stuff. And I've had some people come up to me and say they don't support Jeff because Jeff's more worried about the woke issues. kind of like what Ron DeSantis does in Florida with the wokeness and all that. Do you want to focus on them things, what's happening on the state, or do you just see, hey, look, the Louisiana Attorney General should focus more on the stuff that happened. Now, if it comes to Louisiana, we have to deal with it. But woke culture and stuff like that, what is your outlook on that? Like, it's for, because we have Jeff already on a couple of things with and look, I like Jeff, so I'm just But people tell me, oh, the drag queen story hours, the LGBT wokeness or the school stuff. Jeff's too focused on that. He's not focused on the state. What do you look at that opinion on that on that particular subject?
Look, and I'm not trying to alienate anyone, but I do have a very strong personal constitution, and I'm a Christian, and I was raised that way, and I've lived my life that way. I've made many mistakes, but at the same time, I serve the one who's perfect, and I read the Bible. And I'm going to tell you, there's so much in our society that I believe is a spiritual warfare.
Yep.
And I think the evil one is using some of these things that you just described to try to undermine what's going on in our families, in our society, in our communities. And would I fight back on those principles from a conservative standpoint? Yeah, 100%. 100%. And like I said earlier, I want to be able to balance the resources. We got to pick our battles, but at the same time, we can't lose the war. We can't win the battle and lose the war. So
right.
we gotta understand the big picture. We got to fight back where we need to. And there's a concerted effort across the country with the conservative Republican AGs that are focused on many of those issues. And that's where a lot of that comes from. I can tell you this. I mean, I think there's plenty to do on the crime front. We got to get that under control. Because if we don't get that under control, we don't have a peaceful place for anybody to live. Doesn't that affect business?
Yep.
It affects education. It affects everything. It affects your kids wanting to stay here. Your little babies, when they grow up, are they going to want to stay here if they can't find a job because companies won't come here because the crime's too high? We gotta prioritize what we're doing. Let me end with this, Isaac. So one of my goals would be to have a council of 100. And my council of 100 would grab people from all walks of life. I want professional people. I want common people. I want farmers. I want doctors. I want lawyers. I want engineers. I want people that work in the plants. I want every aspect of life on my council of 100. And what I would do is I'd meet with those folks every 3 months, and I would brainstorm the issues that are relevant and current in the state of Louisiana. And that could include something that's coming from Washington, and that's fine. But I want to get those issues laid out. Have somebody professionally do that with us. Have lunch. The next month, we prioritize the ones from the previous 3 months. We pick out the top 10. So we're going to create a top 10 hit list of things that are very, very important and relevant to my group. Does that mean that I'm going to follow their advice and do everything that they say on that top 10 list? No, but it's going to keep me as a human being relevant to what everybody wants and what's happening. You might serve on my council. I might do a year with the same people and then rotate those people off and do some new people and keep it fresh and keep it relevant. And so that's what I'm looking for. I'm not going to be an AG by committee. That's not what this is. This is about allowing ordinary citizens in the state of Louisiana to have some input and impact on what their government's doing, because it's their AG's office. It's we the people. It's not we Marty. It's
right.
We the people. And I will always stay true to that and always remember that.
Mr. Marty, as we close this section up in the podcast, tell the listeners, if they're in the state of Louisiana, I know we got some from abroad, but our citizens of Louisiana, where they can find you, and if they have any questions, and give us a closing statement. As I tell a lot of my everybody that comes through this studio, if I was a voter undecided, what would you tell me for a final argument?
Sounds good. So I'm going to hold up this card right here. This is my 4-point plan that we've developed and everything, and it has my website on it. It's www.martymaley.com, and it has my cell phone, and I'm going to give that to you. It's the same cell for 30 years, and I'm not changing it, 225-266-5959. So you can go to my website, martymaley.com, or you can call me on my cell, 266-5959. In Baton Rouge, it's a 225 area code. And what I would want you to know is that the 4 things that I think are most important is to be tough on hardened criminals, not on, the criminal justice system, you got to help out people. And I did this for years and years and years as a prosecutor. Probably 80 to 85% of the people that came through the DA's office and through my prosecution experience, they got help to get back on track. About 15% were just hardened criminals that didn't deserve to be helped. They needed to go somewhere where they could not be a danger to you and I. And so we took care of putting those people in that place. And so that's what I want you to know about that. I will fight for victims' rights. I've been a vice president of Crime Fighters, the largest victims group in the state, and dealt with victims all across the state and helped them navigate the criminal justice system and soothe their broken and aching hearts from their losses. And so I would continue to do that. I'd promote the early intervention program that I described to you earlier, and I would always, always, always be pro-life, pro-gun, and pro-Louisiana and fight for all your constitutional rights. So if you want somebody like me that has a tough on crime background, I think you would be well suited to join our team, and I would be honored to have your vote on October 14th.
Mr. Marty, thank you for coming on the Cajun Conservative Show. If you ever want to come back, just let me know.
We're going to come back, guys.
We're going to come back.
Thank you, sir.
All right, everybody. That was Mr. Marty Maley. He is running for Attorney General in the state of Louisiana. Please go ahead and check out his website and give him a call if you need.